So Hugh, 70, 50, 10. What's that about?
Well, 70 years old, which seems incredible. 50 years of ministry, actually plus it was 50 a year or two back because I started as an 18-year-old in youth work. And 10 years since we started Charis Communications, when I handed over the church and decided that my ministry would be based more widely.
So, what do the next 10 years hold for you, the Lord sparing our lives?
Well, you never quite know what it's going to hold, do you? But just looking at the spiritual climate globally, I would say that the three things that I've come to prioritize over the last year or so are the things that are really going to be important in the next decade. I do think increasing biblical literacy is going to be an absolute priority. I'm very sure that developing effective leaders has got to come way up the list. And then all my years in ministry, I've always sought to enhance kingdom initiatives. When someone's got a great idea from God, I've wanted to get behind it and make it happen. And I definitely want to do more of that. So I want to get behind other people's agendas and visions and enable them to see those have a real impact.
That's kingdom-mindedness, working together, what the world calls synergy. Working together with others to ensure that the God-given vision builds the world.
Partnership's always been a passion for me. I've always looked for people that I can work closely with and come alongside and make things happen together. I'm not just looking at sort of standing on a pedestal. I want to try and make sure that there's a great sense of collaboration.
I'm going to take you back a little bit. You used the term biblical literacy. Many people would hear that and wonder, what exactly does that mean?
Well, I think it's really important because you'd think, wouldn't you, that when someone becomes a Christian, the first thing they're going to do is to really get to know the Bible. But in many ways, we're not as good at that as we might think we are, because a lot of preaching these days is much more sort of motivational preaching, isn't it? So there's not a huge amount of biblical content. I know that a lot of people think preaching is you get a point and you hammer it home for 50 minutes. For me,
that's the work of an evangelist or something like that.
Well, yeah, I think it's very interesting that when Peter was preaching on the day of Pentecost, he preached his sermon, which he did brilliantly, really a great expository sermon on more scriptures than most people would quote in a sermon. But then it says, with many such words he exhorted them. And I think what we often do these days is we forget the Bible bit and just go to many such words and go to the exhortation. So I really see a great need for getting more Bible out there. There's a lot of preaching these days that's sort of self-help stuff, the sort of things you might get from motivational books and so on. But it's incredible.
And that's not really preaching, is it?
Well, it isn't really preaching. But the other thing that makes me smile is that actually if people were biblically literate, they'd have even better examples in Scripture that would help them in some of these practical ways too. So I think biblical literacy is important for developing people spiritually, practically, and I just think it's something that just enriches people's lives. And I think evangelistically, when people see how the Bible fits together, it really is a great way of saying to people, look, you can see the power of God in this. This has been written over all these centuries, and yet look at how it comes together. So I'm very committed to that.
And in what formats will that be coming out?
Oh, well, anything you can use. I mean, goodness me, things have moved on since standing in front of a microphone and just preaching, or even when I started, where was the microphone? But these days, on air,
online?
Broadcasting, online, definitely, very much so. We do some stuff in print still, because that's still relevant. But of course, you can do it in print. You get it as an ebook as well.
Yes.
And then in person,
print on demand and stuff like that. Yes.
I don't want to be remote. I want to get out there. I want to be with people. I don't just want people in India to say, "Oh, I get it online." I'd like to be out there so that it engages as well. Because I think that I learned that a lot of people grow spiritually because they get fellowship with leaders. And one of the things that we don't give people enough of these days is that kind of fellowship. The preacher preaches and disappears. So fellowship's really important.
What about the dynamic tension between the bite-sized pieces of information today and the full-blown sermon of the past? How do we marry those two cultures?
Well, one can lead to the other. I mean, people's appetite can increase. I mean, when someone starts off and they've had no biblical background at all, you know, the crumbs are important. Let's have the crumbs that fall from the table. And so doing those little snippets on YouTube, which I want to do more of, we want to set up a new studio so that I can just walk in and record those things regularly and put stuff out on YouTube. That's really important. But we've got loads and loads of stuff that we broadcast on television that we can make available for people that want the longer stuff. So I think both are important, but definitely using social media, getting stuff out there, bite-sized clips, making stuff that one time you could have needed a big screen to view, get it out there so that you can read it on your phone.
On your tablets and
so
phones
moving forward in those kind of ways.
All right, and now the second thing?
Oh, right, developing effective leaders. And this is so important, you know. There are lots of leadership training programs out there, but I want to get alongside people who are actually doing it and help them on the way, rather than train them and then find out whether they can do it or not. So I'm looking for people that are already up there having a go at it and see if we can come along and strengthen their hands. It's always easier to steer a car when it's moving, isn't it? It's always easier to help someone on the way when they're already going. So that's really important to me. We try and do that everywhere I go around the world. We look to gather leaders, particularly younger leaders if we can, because the age profile of leadership seems to be going up, which is incredible. So many young people coming to faith and getting to know God, huge amount of enthusiasm, but the age profile of leaders is still creeping up. I mean, when I started in my teens, I planted churches in my 20s, and these days we don't expect people to do anything until their 30s or 40s.
Or even 50s.
And big question marks over whether they're capable. But let's get alongside people and make it happen.
I find that it's not just in the church, even in governments, there is a paucity of leadership. So if you can be very effective in that, you might find that you're actually raising leaders who will go into not just the church, but political sector, because leadership is leadership.
Leadership is leadership, and you can take that into anywhere. And I'm really believing that in the next 10 years, I'll be able to do much more in those kind of environments, get alongside political leaders. I'm already able to do it because some of the positions I hold, but I want to do more of that. And I actually find sometimes it's easier to be accessing presidents and vice presidents outside of the country than it is to be reaching top leaders here. But you know, when we're talking about leaders, that really leads into that third thing about kingdom initiatives, because that is so important to me. I've always tried to get behind other people's agendas and visions and make it happen. But if I can do that with young leaders so that there's actually a project that they're doing and I'm getting behind that, then I can be actually making it happen. And the project can be, you know, small, large. I mean, maybe there are some people that are trying to reach a nation and some people are trying to reach a village. But if it's got God's stamp on it, it might be an educational project. It might be a healthcare project. But to get alongside, if it's kingdom-minded,
it's God-breathed.
And reaching just beyond that local congregation to have an impact on the community. I mean, that's why we started churches in communities, because we want to impact communities with the gospel.
Which brings us to the very, very key thing. When you do that kind of thing, what happens is, because the focus is on other people's initiatives, it's on building other people, you tend to, you lack the funds and you lack the resources that are needed to do that. So I believe that that's where some of the focus must go now.
You're wise there, really. I'll be honest and say that I've always had much more success raising finance for other people's initiatives of my own.
I can testify to that. You know.
I'm just not a great fundraiser. And someone said to me 10 years ago when we started Caris Communications, I needed a significant sum of money so that would give me the impetus. Because otherwise you're forever fundraising.
Free you really to get on with the ministry, so that, you know, when you have that kind of financial backing or foundation, then you can really just go ahead. And in the next 10 years of your life, you're going to really need to operate from rest.
And I mean, when you preach at a big church and you get a significant honorarium, that is such a blessing. But then on the other hand, you've got to sustain the ministry the rest of it. When you're doing stuff in the studio, when you're doing stuff with smaller churches, when you've got to fly at your own
developing
expense.
Leaders, you know, who are not
and a lot of the time, there are places I'd love to go and they say, can you come? And then I look at the budget and I think, well, how am I going to meet the budget? So no, you are right. We do need to look at those kind of things.
Well, we really want to, first of all, appreciate those who have supported.
I couldn't have got where I am
Yes.
without the people that already give. And, you know, they need to know that this event that we put on this evening is to say thank you as much as anything else, because people have been great.
Yeah. But now I want to add my, you know, my own appeal to say, we want to get this thing going. We want to get these 3 areas of focus off the ground, and we just need people to support in every area, particularly financially, so that that frees you to do what you have to do, go where you have to go, and you're not hindered by the fact that you have to, as some people do, ask for money up front or something before they go. You know,
No, I wouldn't want to do that.
Which we wouldn't want to do.
And God's given me a great team, and I want to see them supported too, because it's them that make it all happen.
Well, one last word to the people as we go.
Well, I suppose now I've turned 70. Anyone can stand alongside me and look young, so make the most of it.
Thank you very much, Hugh. We look forward to a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful event.
Thank you.